I didn't really want to know how to rebuild a carburetor. It just happened by chance. Mostly because another boy had come on the ranch who was fascinated and took the whole thing apart. And then my second and third son were like, Mom, we got to put it back together. So I'm on eBay trying to figure out what carburetor. I mean, that was not on my life plan. Rebuilt a four-wheeler with my boys. But it has been wonderful and beautiful, and we love it. We've captured that time so well.
Hi, you're listening to the Zan Tyler Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Zan Tyler Podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschooling journey. Let me take just a minute to remind you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and leave us a 5-star review if this podcast has been encouraging to you. It's amazing how much that helps other families like you find our podcast. You can also find the Zan Tyler Podcast on social media. So today, I'm so excited to welcome my dear friend, Brandee Gillham, to the podcast. Brandee is the mom of 6 boys, ages 16, 14, and 7, and little Ben, who is now in heaven with Jesus.
4 boys.
What did I say?
6 boys.
Did I say 6 boys? Oh, good grief.
It's okay. But I thought it's not going to make sense the rest of the podcast.
No, it's not. Okay. Brandee is so thankful she left the world of teaching collegiate anatomy to become a homeschooling mom. She encourages others by telling them that no time invested in our children will ever be wasted. Mm-hmm. She and her husband, Roy, run a 10,000-acre ranch filled with cattle and horses. That's a very un-cowboy way of saying it. But she spends her day homeschooling, and the boys spend their days helping Brandee and Roy run this ranch. It's amazing how they've worked together as a family to become entrepreneurs, ranchers, and serve their community. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to be encouraged. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited about our podcast today. I am actually in Peets, Colorado with my dear friend, Brandee Gillham, and we have been having so much fun on their ranch. So for those of you who have ever been interested in any type of homesteading or homeschooling, this is the podcast for you. So, Brandee, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Zan, thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight, a joy.
We have just had a great visit together. So, I want you to just start by telling us a little bit about where you live.
Oh, well, I live in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's one of those dots on the map that nobody even knows exists. But Northeast Colorado. And I live on my husband's family ranch. We are 4th-generation ranchers raising the 5th generation here. It's what we call a cow-calf operation. About 300 cow-calf pairs. My husband's real passion is raising quarter horses. We may have about 50, but we don't. He has an inventory list. I don't keep track of it very well. And then, oh goodness, my boys raise chickens, much to my husband's chagrin. That's something he's real proud of. But we love our farm eggs, and we raise meat, chickens, meat, turkeys as well. So not just eggs, but for the meat as well. And then I have 3 dairy cows that I milk, and 2 dogs. Oh, and I have 4 beehives. So I started raising bees a few years ago. So that's kind of the ranch economy, so to speak. That's where I live.
That is pretty amazing, you guys. Now, if you're cowboys or ranchers, plug your ears. But I'm going to tell you the size of the ranch. And usually people don't talk about this, but it's 10,000 acres.
Right.
And I tell you this just because we have had so much fun exploring and roping dummy calves, if that's what you call it.
A roping dummy, yes.
Yeah, a roping dummy. Right. And we're going to see the beehives later, and we've been in the stalls, and it's just, it has been amazing to see. Joe has grown up outside a lot of his life, I would say. I'm a city girl who lives in the country. So these are always fun, adventures for me. So I want to come back to that, Brandee, but first of all, tell us your homeschool story.
Oh, well, like many, I was an unlikely candidate, I would say. When Roy and I first started dating, I told him, when the last baby is in school, in public school, then I want to go back to teaching. And the Lord has such an outstanding sense of humor. So homeschooling was not on my radar, and I had actually just battled cancer, and I had finished my last round of chemotherapy on August 5th of 2013, and our oldest son, Jake, was about to embark on kindergarten on August 26th. And it literally wasn't on my radar. He was going to be a 4th generation Pete's Bulldog. I mean, he was probably going to bleed green and gold. And his great grandpa had graduated from this school. It was one of the reasons we moved back home to the family ranch, was so our kids could go to this great little government school. Well, I have journaled for my boys every day of their life, be it good, bad, or crazy, maybe all of the above.
All right, you got to back up a little bit. Because when people aren't going to understand what you're talking about, do you have 4 separate journals?
I do. So each boy will have kind of a life journal that they will get to read of the funny people always say, write down the funny things they say, or the sweet memories of the day. So we have that. I've journaled. And it's just a couple paragraphs each day in their journal, but each boy has their own journal that they get. I
just think that's amazing, because when I homeschooled, I was so tired by the time bedtime came, and then I would work at night. So I would put them to bed, rest a little bit, and do my writing and legislative work or whatever it was we were doing at the time, maybe from 10 to 2 or 10 to 3 in the morning, and just work when everybody else slept. But I just can't imagine having the energy at the end of it. And I just think, what a gift to your kids. Moms out there, if you're listening, that's a fabulous gift to your kids. And if you can't handle the thought of every day, maybe even once a week, that would be such a gift. So. And I think they like the idea that it's handwritten, but another manageable way would be to just type it then. Right.
Because people type so much faster than writing, but it'll be a sweet treasure for the boys. I do.
For sure.
Sometimes even actually ask to read their life story now, and I don't mind if they do.
Right.
But
well, that just...
It is something.
It just makes them appreciate it that much more.
Right.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, back to the homeschooling journey.
Yes.
So I was writing every day, but I didn't know so much of what was going on in Jake's day that I was just devastated.
Oh, when he started
school. Yes. And I thought, how am I going to keep a journal for the rest of his life if I don't know what's going on? But then I also had a dream one night that there were white tables in my basement and it looked like a classroom. And I thought, and we were doing youth ministry at the time where they were coming into our basement. And I'm like, well, that doesn't work for what we're doing with this ministry with these kids. And so I said to Roy in bed one night, I said, honey, I really feel like the Lord is calling us to homeschooling. And he goes, oh, no, I don't think so. Could you pray about it? Let's both pray. Because I don't understand all these thoughts I'm having. And I was reading a book at that time that was really convicting, that I felt was also, what was interesting in the book is it had like the homeschooling mantra, which I didn't know was the homeschooling mantra, Deuteronomy 6 and 7.
Right.
And I thought, well, how am I going to do this while we're walking along the road and while we're lying down and at home? I don't know how I'm going to do that.
That's right.
How am I going to disciple them? So I said, Roy, would you pray about it? And He said, well, sure. But I kind of knew he was thinking, no, I'm not going to.
Right. Okay.
So this was about March, and our state homeschool conference happens about the second week of June every year. And I had found out about it, and I thought, well, we'll just go and we'll go learn about curriculum, right? That was my big question.
You're right.
And then, and I had approached his mom, who was a public educator. Well, she's an administrator, actually. And she said, now, when you go to those things, they're going to convince you that's the only thing to do. And I thought, well, I'm pretty convinced it is what we should be doing right now.
And you were trained to be a public school teacher, right? You and Roy both?
Yes.
Okay.
We both have our teaching certificates. Okay. And I mostly taught at the collegiate level. I taught one very long year of public school. And then I went to teaching at the collegiate level for 4 years before we had our first son. Okay. So we go to this conference, and even then, Roy was kind of pulling the reins back a little bit of thinking, oh gosh, I don't know. Let's try it for 1 year. So I put out my white tables in the classroom, put up the posters on the wall.
So your dream came true.
Yeah, I did.
White tables and okay.
And I thought, oh Lord, what am I doing? What if I ruin my children? And all of the fears, came. Right. But I have a couch, just this small white couch I guess it's white too. I didn't even think about that till just now. But I sat down with the boys. I had 2 of them at that time, and they were kind of sandwiching me. And I just prayed. And I also just wept with thankfulness that the Lord brought me to that moment. And it's been a wonderful ride since then, but I cannot imagine doing anything different with my life.
So tell us how old your boys are now. And that'll give us a little bit of perspective.
My oldest son, Jake, is 16. Matt is 14. Large gap in there, but that's when I fought cancer.
Uh-huh.
And then Waitley is 7. And I had a 4th son who would be 5, but he died at 26 months old.
Okay. And he is with the Lord.
He is with the Lord. He's praising the Lord.
And so Brandee and I met at the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference, the one that you went to.
Yes.
And you were the first person there at 7:00 in the morning the first year you went.
It's like the old Mervyn's commercial. Open, let me in here. Where it's like, why do we get out of bed so early? No one's here.
And then you have come full circle because you've gotten quite involved in the conference. Yes. And this is actually where Brandee and I met. Mm-hmm. I was speaking at the Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference or Convention, which is the conference for CHEC, which is the Colorado Homeschool Organization. Yes. And I was speaking, but I was also doing the leadership forum that year, and you were in charge of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we sat at the table together, and then this great friendship has just blossomed over the years, and I'm so grateful.
Me too.
So tell us, after you got into homeschooling, and you're still homeschooling because, like you said, Jake is 16 and then the other boys are younger. Mm-hmm. What kept you homeschooling?
Oh, that's a great question.
What do you think are the benefits?
Well, the reason I kept homeschooling is I felt like that was obedience to what the Lord had called me to do. So that's why I kept doing it, was to be obedient, I guess. But some of my favorite parts is, one of the things I say all the time is that we will never regret the time we invest in our children. Mm-hmm. You never run into a woman in a grocery store that says, oh, are you spending too much time with your kid? They never say things like that, but they're like, cherish it, love it. And I know it comes from a heart of sincerity of it goes really fast. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why we keep doing it. And I feel like it's one of the most perfect discipleship models. I mean, really, to seek the scriptures with your children. And because in Colorado, our homeschool law says we have to do it for an average of 4 hours a day. And in that, I mean, we have at least an hour of that's dedicated just to scripture reading, catechism, just
right,
character training type things. But then all of the curriculum we use integrates that biblical worldview too. And so I was a trained scientist. I taught anatomy at the collegiate level. And I didn't come to know the Lord till I was 19. But, I mean, I was like a staunch evolutionist, actually. So, and I knew of Christian. I didn't become a Christian until I was 19 either. But anyhow, it was these like separate things. So even after I came to know the Lord, it was like science was truth and scripture was truth.
But never the twain shall meet.
Yes.
Right.
No. And man, you want to talk about a staunch creationist now. That's who I am today. But I've loved teaching the boys where, God is in all of it. It's not separated out in, God's not in math or God's not in this. God is in all. God is a God of order. Why do we have to learn algebra? Because God is a God of order. No other reason probably do you have to know algebra. but that one is good. Yeah. Why do we have to know language? Because we want to read his word. We want to be able to speak his word. So there's a million reasons why I've kept with it. And I love cherishing the time and just investing in my children.
Well, and especially after losing Benjamin, you know how precious every moment with every son is. So let's talk a little bit. When we got here, we had seen your boys. I think the last time we had seen your boys was at that particular Rocky Mountain Homeschool Conference. And you and I have kept up. No, we saw each other at the Ark.
We saw each other
at the Ark.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, but the thing I've loved about being at the ranch with you is watching how you all work together.
We do.
So, I mean, it's really because I know that once you got back to the ranch, that Roy lost his dad unexpectedly, and this was going to be a joint venture.
Right.
And you're doing it on your own, and you've got all this in homeschooling. So tell us a little bit what a day in the life looks like for a rancher homeschool mom whose kids are very involved in all the work.
Mm-hmm. So we start some mornings milking a cow or feeding my sourdough and making breakfast. And really, Roy and I have a great pattern that actually didn't establish until Ben passed away of reading our Bible and devotion. So that's sometimes we milk first, depending on how early we're trying to get chores done, and then come back in and do devotions and then head off to breakfast. And then school I do try to fill 4 hours, and I feel like I've made little robots. They love checking things off a list. And so I plan school for a week at a time,
right? And
they can find what they need to do. But then the blessing of ranching is they then get to, particularly for boys, maybe, I don't know, I have no daughters, so maybe my daughters would love it too if I have daughters, but they love getting to spend the afternoons with their dad.
Yeah.
So they're learning things like stockmanship, how to handle cows, how to work with a horse. They're breaking horses. We do leather work on the side, so building saddles, and there's so much of our life that's integrated in all things. Right. And it's our standard family economy. It's a common word in the homeschooling movement. What's your family economy? So we work together in all of it. So we all help in the kitchen, and then we all help outside. And then, so some afternoons we'll be processing cattle, and we're all just out there doing it together. But then they'll all come and help me plant the garden too. So there's not this weird division of labor, so to speak. Right. It's this. And I want to teach my boys as many life skills as possible. Everything from cooking to cleaning to,
right.
They know who gets toilet duty.
And rebuilding four-wheelers and, all the other things you've done with them that right. I would think, okay, I'm going to have to be more brave with my grandson.
Oh, I didn't really want to know how to rebuild a carburetor. It just happened by chance. Mostly because another boy had come on the ranch who was fascinated and took the whole thing apart. And then my second and third son were like, Mom, we got to put it back together. So I'm on eBay trying to figure out what carburetor. I mean, that was not on my life plan. I was rebuilt a four-wheeler with my boys. But it has been wonderful and beautiful, and we love it. We've captured that time so well.
Yeah, it's really very, very meaningful. So we went to church with you guys yesterday, and that was a real blessing. And Matt was recognized for having graduated from 8th grade. And but I know that y'all are also very involved in outreach at your church, and like every other Monday night, you're having the college group here.
Right. Yeah, we have a college ministry called Cowboy Up Round Pen. And this ministry's been around for about 30 years, and it's actually a parachurch ministry. And we invite college kids to come here, and every other Monday night we provide them a home cooked meal, which, as college kids, after all, you're just tired of pizza, Snicker bars, and Mountain Dews or whatever you're, unless they were homeschooled, then I'm sure they eat much better than the rest of us did. But they come, and then Roy normally is the one that gives the message, just trying to encourage these kids. And we talk about the issues that they're facing or things that they're thinking. A lot of them are it's a 2-year college. So they're looking at job pursuits. They're looking at marriage. What does biblical marriage look like?
Yeah.
So it's a really sweet time of fellowship that we do during the standard school year with those kids.
And like everything else, you're doing it together with your family.
We are.
And your boys, your sons are here with them and helping cook and clean up and just be a part of the dinner and all of that.
Right. This last semester, we had 3 boys that were part of the student government at the college who absolutely took, particularly to Waitley, our third son. I mean, they're bouncing him around, they're throwing him in the air. It was almost like they had adopted our family versus what we really often think, we're trying to bring them into ours.
Right.
They adopted our kids.
That is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So this morning, we all had breakfast together, and Roy left to take Jake into Denver.
Yeah.
And he is going to be with one of my very favorite people in the world, Rick Green.
Yes.
So tell us what Jake is going to be doing for the week.
So he's attending Patriot Academy. This is his maiden voyage. So we're going to do a lot of learning this week. My understanding, so Jake had to submit a bill early on, and his goal will be to get his bill passed.
Right.
And as a normal ranch kid, he's like, in the state of Colorado, we should be driving at the age of 14 instead of 16 on the ranch. So that's his bill. He wanted to do child trafficking at first, and we talked about something that maybe he was even more passionate about, because he's very passionate about child trafficking, but he decided to go to being able to drive on the ranch legally.
Well, it's nice so I did Girl State, and you did Girl State.
I did.
And so we talked about that and just how important it is to be inside the seat of government and begin to understand it, and then you're not intimidated by it.
Right.
I think that was, even though when I started homeschooling and didn't know anything about lobbying, I understood the governmental process, and I had been very involved at different levels in high school and a little bit in college. And so being there was not intimidating. Yeah. I had to learn a whole lot of skills that I didn't have. That was intimidating, but at least I was familiar with the place and the process a little bit. So I think if we're going to raise our kids to be active, informed citizens, programs like this are a great way to do it. I know with this particular academy, so Jake will be the youngest, and it goes from 16 to 25-year-olds. And I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday. She texted me to say that she has a 25-year-old daughter who's actually going to be running for office, and she'll be there as well. Oh. So, so that's what we love to see is our children growing up to take a stand for what they believe in and for the good of the community. Absolutely. So many of these kids, and I see this in Jake, your son, so much, just this heart to serve other people and this heart to give back. I mean, he is just, both of your older boys, and Waitley too. He's the 7-year-old and the baby, but those 2 older boys, they're just an example of what, you want your young men to be. We have thoroughly enjoyed laughing with them and talking about important things, and Joe's been out on the ranch with them, and I don't know that he's going to leave with me to come home tomorrow.
Just staying in the guest room for a while longer.
That'll be great. A little bit of too much information here. I've been gluten-free and mostly dairy-free, except for a little raw milk, for the last 12 years. And Joe loves gluten, but I don't cook.
I didn't even ask before I made you biscuits and gravy. I'm so sorry.
But Joe had his favorite gluten-filled meal for breakfast the other morning with your homemade biscuits and gravy. And I realized I got to start cooking a little bit of gluten every once in a while. Maybe just for my husband. Yeah,
just a love meal for him.
Yes, that's right. So Brandee was giving me all kinds of hints on doing the gravy again. I got to figure out. You can help me figure out a gluten-free version of the gravy.
Oh, yeah.
So
I bet you we could.
So one of the things that homeschoolers are so interested in now, in terms of just expanding what we do at home, is the homesteading. Yeah. And you can go to Brandee's website. Is it brandeegillham.com?
It is.
And she talks about how to plant and grow, how to ranch. All of these things that she does. But the other thing is just entrepreneurship and giving our kids skills where they can start their own businesses. It might not be a lifelong business, but it teaches them principles. Yeah. And so I was just so intrigued by the different things the boys do that are still just so in sync with homeschooling and the ranch. But are those things all right, so I'm going to recite some of these to you, but you can comment on them. How many chickens do y'all have?
Oh, I think we have about 180 chickens.
Okay.
30 of them are broilers, so they're being raised for fair first to show, and then we will eat the leftovers.
Oh, you're right.
We'll eat the rest of them.
How many eggs do you get a day?
Well, so that's a little tricky because we have about 50 Oler layers, so we're only getting about 30 eggs a day. I shouldn't say only.
Yeah,
most people are thinking like, that's 30 to 30 eggs a day. But then we bought 100 new chickens that we added to the flock. So in about 4 more months, I'm hoping we're getting way more, like about 100 eggs a day.
So I know that yesterday, it was either before or after we got home from church. Matt was saying it was his turn to file or something.
Yes.
Or Jake, I can't remember which one. But so they actually take care of the eggs and they sell them. I mean,
Right.
They've got an egg business.
So our deal with the boys was we will pay for the infrastructure to get the enterprise set up, and we'll buy the feed. We'll eat as many eggs as we want and use as many as I want for baking and cooking. But all the excess, you guys can put in egg cartons and you can sell to the community. But you're also responsible for all of the chores. So, and they chore 3 times a day. So it's morning, noon, and night. The only reason we really do it at noon is because the chickens will actually eat eggs sometimes. And once they start eating eggs, then they'll start like eating all the eggs. So we gather a lot of eggs at our noon.
Okay.
chore time.
Okay.
So-
and so, but they keep up with the finances of the business and the sales and delivering them and all of that, which is just, it's really remarkable. Yesterday, Joe and I were walking at sunset and Jake ran out and showed us an egg without a shell.
I know.
Which we had never seen before.
It's very rare.
Yes. So
It must be just because you were here.
yeah, so all the things we're really learning and enjoying. But so it's so much more than an egg business.
It is.
It's teaching them responsibility, bookkeeping, delivery, people skills,
Customer service. Yes.
service, all of these things. And if y'all have noticed since COVID, we have lost so much customer service in this economy.
Yeah.
We flew out here and we were on an American flight, and it's like we had the best steward or flight attendant we have had in years, and he was so pleasant and so kind. We just find a lot today that people are angry when they're flying. And so it was so nice to see those people who love people and love to take care of them. And teaching our kids to do that, I think, is so important. And these skills are so transferable.
Right.
So, okay. So now you have to tell us about their second business, and that is it called leather making or leather crafting, or what do you call that?
So we call the business Rim Ranch Leather is the name of the business enterprise. And it was something their grandpa actually taught them. And it joined with 4-H. So they started learning how to carve leather as 4-H projects. And then it's slowly grown. And he had gone to saddle making school. But last March, we sent the boys to saddle making school actually officially Roy went, but he asked the instructor if he could bring his 2 homeschooled boys with him. So Roy took our 2 older boys, and in 2 weeks, they built 2 saddles. It took him about 70 hours each week to build the saddle. And that's something they really love. So both of the boys are really great with both. So carving leather is more that picture look where you see flowers. And then stamping leather is more the geometric patterns. So they make anything from belts to folios to saddles now. And we've got some big 4-H projects that need to be done here soon. And they do like chinks and shafts. So what cowboys wear on their legs. A lot of cowboy-based gear.
Right.
Like the folio, I think I showed you and Joe.
Gorgeous.
What are those?
You don't have it laying around here, do you?
I do.
So y'all will get to see up close and personal what our boys are doing. And we're hoping that this will give you some ideas of things you can do with your kids. Can you?
So this is the folio, and so this is carving right here. And then, oops.
Let's make sure everybody can see that. So So that's the inside. So you got a little bit of carving on the inside.
Yep. So that you would put paperwork there and a
But
business
the
card.
beautiful carving is on the outside. It's just gorgeous.
So that's something the boys produce and they're creating right now. And belts are really common. Everyone wants their name on the back of a belt, but you got to ask people their waist size, and that's always a little tricky, particularly women.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
That's right.
so that is something else that we've just, again, and we do it as a family business. So I kind of help with the website and help with design and layout.
Right.
Roy does a lot of the manufacturing work. He's really great at seeing how all of the pieces fit together, and then the boys do a lot of the carving and the stamping. So again, it's one more thing we do as a whole family.
You know, one of the things I always say about homeschooling, it is really the intersection of living, learning, and loving. And so when we can teach our children these amazing life skills
Right.
that will carry over into everything we do, I really think that's the power of homeschooling.
It is.
So for you young moms out there, don't relegate your homeschooling just to your schoolwork.
Oh, yeah.
But learn how to be together and have family bonding experiences together and work together and love each other well. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Zan Tyler podcast. It's been such an honor and a privilege and so much fun to have Brandee here with me as we've been talking about all things homeschooling, homesteading, entrepreneurship, you name it, we've discussed it. You can find Brandee and learn more about her adventures and how you can participate in some of these things at her website, brandeegillham.com. And as always, you can find me at zantyler.com and on social media. Thanks for spending the time with us today. It's always a joy to have you. May God continue to bless you and your family as you homeschool. Thanks and bye.